Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Dungeon Master's Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game, the only person capable of playing God, killing characters, and lowering the egos of all of the people at the table. My name is DM Chris, that's aka DM Chris, and I am joined by...
DM Neal, aka Jote Maniac.
Neal, I am super excited for this episode. When we were talking about things last week, we were talking about doing some potential monsters. We listed some off, and we're going to talk about the cute and ever so cuddly, maybe not, I don't know, blink dogs is what we're going to talk about this episode.
You're right. If you blink, you miss it.
Exactly.
It's only like a 5-minute episode. No, I'm just kidding.
Poof. It's gone.
It's true. We're going to talk about blink dogs, but you know what I say? I say that means it's time to head to the meat.
I'm starving. We ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days.
Why can't we have some meat?
The flat meat's back on the menu, boys.
Rather than completely skip over our interview section, we're going to ask each other a surprise question.
Love it.
Okay, what is your favorite board game from last year?
Ooh, from last year. I don't know. It's not like a new one. I've played it a lot before. So, like, good thing you didn't ask me what's your favorite new board game.
Nope.
I really got into Codenames last year. That was a really fun one.
Okay.
Like, we had a couple people on our staff that I work with that enjoyed it. And yeah, we were just playing through the missions and doing out on all the different difficulties, trying to, go around the world and beat all the, instead of just playing it like, hey, you have all of the chances to make it, like, you've actually got to try it. So it was a lot of fun. It was a fun thing to play, like, over lunch with a couple of people from work and whatnot. So
nice.
I'd say that was my favorite board game from last year. Nothing too fancy. But what about you, Neal? What was your favorite board game from last year?
So there are many versions of Monopoly, but I feel that I have stumbled into the best version of Monopoly.
Okay.
It's called Builder Monopoly.
Okay.
Because it has a very set win condition.
Okay. Instead of just everybody giving up and saying whoever has the most money win? Yeah, basically.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, so the win condition is basically to build a certain height tower, and you put a penthouse on it. First person to make the penthouse, you're done. And then you add up what you have at that point.
Oh, nice.
There's a super straightforward win condition. It works with the kids. No one seems to hate each other after. So
yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah. If you were to ask my daughter what her favorite game was, it would be Candyland. I could not tell you how many times I played Candyland this past year. She's 4, but, we're working our way up to D&D. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that mean you have a question for me? You have to.
Oh, you want me to give you a question
Yes.
too? If you had to sum up 2021 as a D&D monster, what would it be and why?
Gibbering mouther. Too many people are saying too many things. That's it. We'll leave it there. Done.
I didn't even have an answer for it, but that sounds lovely. That's a that's a great answer.
Perfect. That means that we get to talk about a wonderful monster. And I feel like this is probably one of the first times where, like, we really kind of almost put air quotes on it. Like, it's in the monster manual, don't get me wrong, but the blink dog doesn't necessarily fit into that bag of hit points
Right.
Category as much as a lot of the other ones we've talked about. We've definitely added nuance and how do you add them to your game. But this is probably the first one that we've done where it's far less likely that your players will just outright fight them.
Right. Yeah, they are very squishy, to say the least. I mean, their challenge rating, Neal, if I am looking at this correctly, is a quarter.
Yes.
Quarter. 0.25 challenge rating. Which is like, if you accidentally stumble over this thing, you might kill it. Mm-hmm. But you got to do it before it blinks out of existence.
Yep.
The interesting part that I didn't know is we're just kind of talking about, like, stats and things about them before we get into some more, like, how would we use them in games and what would be fun things to do with them. I did not know that they were lawful good.
Mm-hmm.
According to their line. I did not know that. I just assumed everything from the Feywild was just chaotic all the way around, or a majority of the things.
Yeah, so lawful good, and then I did a decent amount of research, and it was interesting to see what all they were tied to, because they also get tied back to some deities, those deities being, of course, good ones, but it is also interesting the amount of intelligence that they are given, because they have a 10.
Yes.
So it's not nothing. And the best part is that languages.
Yeah. I
Blink
love this.
dog.
Yeah, blink dog language.
It's like, okay, so you understand Elven because you're a fake creature, and you can speak your own version of blink dog.
So does that mean somebody could learn the language blink dog?
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
Yes.
If a blink dog had opposable thumbs and could write it down for us, we could learn it.
Well, no, just like Antonio Banderas in the 13th Warrior. As long as you sit around long enough, you too can learn blink dog.
That is how language works. If you just sit around long enough, not even dedicate yourself to being a linguist who can decipher nuances and things within language. Just sit and listen.
Yeah, hang out for like an hour or a night and you're good to go.
Exactly. And Neal, they have, obviously, we'll state the obvious, they have this ability to, quote unquote, blink out of existence, which makes them fun and also like, if there's a bunch of them around, could be really terrifying at the same time, you know?
Yeah, the interesting thing is like where that sits, because it's a specific 40-foot range.
Right.
So then it's not like actual blink, which is kind of funny because that's a quantified spell. So they're not going 30 feet. Instead, they're going 40.
Right.
But it's also not more powerful like some of the other spells.
Right. And at the same time, they have the ability to use Dimension Door as well. That's not their ability, right?
No, so that's in some other iterations. Not only give them blink, but then give them Dimension Door as well.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous to add that in.
Yeah. Which is super funny because it says, like, for example, onto the bough of a tree they could blink, back to the entrance of the mansion, or downward 300 feet at a 45-degree angle to the south. So, like, they could legit dimension a long ways away if they wanted to.
Yeah, so that's probably the most interesting thing about, like, the different iterations that you go through with the blink dog, because it's really up to you what that 10 intelligence means. Because I was reading some stuff that like it's almost this more that it's an innate power, so it's like I'm thinking of getting close enough to the orc to bite it. I'm not thinking
right
like you're saying 45 degrees 300 feet at a at this angle underground. I'm not doing that, but I could.
Yes, right. They could very easily. One of the things that I thought was really funny that's been written about blink dogs is their just ravenous hatred for displacer beasts, you know? And we talked about this a little bit beforehand. Like, yeah, can you imagine the sight of just like, I feel like if you were to do like a National Geographic Feywild edition, you see like, oh, the blink dog in its natural habitat. Then you see the displacer beast come in and just like all of a sudden it's almost like the Avengers Endgame, where you have like just one blink dog just like utterly defeated against this displacer beast. And then they all say in blink dog on your left. And you just have like 15 of them show up to just come after the displacer beast.
It would be required because, the flip side is that the displacer beast is a challenge rating of 3 rather than 1 quarter.
Which is much more difficult. Yes. Yep. Is there anything else that we want to say about the definition of the blink dog?
I think, they have a pretty standard look and have pretty much for every iteration, because they were in 1st edition. They're in 5th edition. I think they kind of became popularized in 3rd more than anything else. But like they kind of have the same look, and I would say
just like updated art.
Yeah, in the same way that I would want to get more adventurous with displacer beasts, I would do the same thing with the blink dog. Like, there's every kind of dog that I can think of, from your same thing. An errant steppe could remove a chihuahua from this world. You also have dogs that are upwards of 200 pounds.
Right.
So I think figuring out like what you think would be the most fun for your table, I think is probably the direction I would go. But standard, they're just kind of a big, almost mastiff Dane looking dog that still has fey elements to it, but it's a dog.
I also imagine when you're saying like figure out the iteration of it, the first thing that came to mind, you remember the old movie Oliver and Company back in the day with the cat who like goes into the New York streets, gets lost by his owner, and runs across like this whole like abandoned pack of animals. I just imagine like that could be a really fun. You just have like the stray blink animals in some town somewhere. And they're called Oliver and Company. Anyways, enough about the definitions of what blink dogs are. Neal, how would you use blink dogs in your game?
So, I mean, like I said, I would first figure out like what kind I want, and then I was reading not just D&D but also Pathfinder's approach to blink dogs, and man alive did they decide that they're going to be a whole lot more, in that they have basically societies that almost like, you know, the individual pack would, you know, be more akin to the idea of a clan.
Right.
And those certain clans have certain things that they'll do. They'll defend a town in the area that they're in. They're beholden to, let's say, a whole group of halflings, and that's passed down from generation to generation. And so I think making something more like that. They also added, like, you have an alpha that's running the pack, be it male, be it female, but you also had a sage who basically could potentially have sorcerer levels. So it is that kind of, like I said, like you think of the barbarian clans, and then they have the shaman that's with them, or the seer, or someone with the magical affinity that they go to for those sort of things. So I think I would lean more towards that. But then it's also interesting to do that without also anthropomorphizing them at all. Like they're still just dogs.
Right. Yeah, because they're not considered beasts, and they're not considered humanoids. Their technical creature definition is fae. Mm-hmm. You know, and so it's hard for us because even, you know, I think of the Redwall series where they anthropomorphized mice and rats and, you know, all of these creatures to make them be human and have their own language and society at the same time. Like blink dogs are fae who have their own language. For all intents and purposes, they are very sentient beings who have their own societal classes and stuff like that, which I think is really interesting. The idea that I, you know, think of, you know, when you were talking, Neal, I really like the idea of like halflings for whatever reason, or like dwarfs having blink dogs be tied to their society in some ways. I think that could be a really fun, having them be like partners, but not necessarily. I mean, you can do it however you want. You could have them be very smart pets, or you could have them be their own society, you know, which is a really interesting idea to take on. Have them either be like allies with the halflings that they just coexist with, or they're just really smart pets that are passed down and bred and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, you mentioned dwarves, they're tied to, for Forgotten Realms, they were tied for a bit to Marthamor Duin, which is basically the dwarven god that like wanders around. Is like pathways and things like that. And he was tied to blink dogs in a way. So yeah, it would almost be interesting that they could be like the surface guardians for like a dwarven mine, and then have like these deep caves and things that they live in. Well, the other thing I think of is like it's also hard in a way to think of like what that's. I mean, it's a fun mental exercise, but like the idea of like what that society begins to look at the more you run that through. Because, you know, I think of all the things, the technological advances for this guy with two thumbs, they don't have any. So then thinking of what like those advancements are. The other thing is also deciding how quickly they die, which just to take a hard left turn, because some of them were like, 8 to 10 years, pretty standard, you know, air quote dog lifespan. But then another was like 100 something. Right. It's really interesting to decide, because I mean, if it's 100 something, you definitely also have to make decisions about how they procreate, or else it's just like, there's blink dogs everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and two, like, yeah, exactly. But if you have blink dogs that live for 8 to 10 years, their society looks very different than blink dogs that can live to be 100 years. You know, if you're 8 to 10 years, you're not really able to get a whole lot done or set up a whole lot in terms of structure or education, or, you know, however that works for blink dogs. But 100 years, I mean, that's longer than humans. So in some ways, you would have to think of, what would a really advanced blink dog society look like? You know, if they live for that long, is that where like the sage blink dog comes in, because they have learned how to use magic in ways other than just dimension dooring or blinking, you know? Do they have are there like warrior blink dogs, which they've figured out how to use different barks or bones that they've found to create armor or weapons or whatever, you know, however that would look on their bodies, you know, those sorts of things. I can imagine if those are going to be the pathways that you take, like you almost have to have blink dogs last for 50 to 100 years in order to accomplish something like that.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it even says on the teleport, I was pulled it up to read it again, but it does say, along with any equipment it is wearing or carrying.
That it blinks with them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like specifically noting that piece.
Yeah, I imagine that these could be really good, depending on how they look, they could be really good spies in a game, you know? Like, who's going to think anything of a dog? Especially if it's like, somehow somebody on the material plane has made a pact with or learned how to speak blink dog. Like, who's going to think about a stray dog when they're having conversations around? You know, like if they are living for so long and have the ability to learn other languages, you know, could that be something that, or could they sneak in somewhere and steal a journal that you tell them to look for in Sylvan or something like that? You know, there's tons of fun and then they just blink out, like poof, gone. You know, no harm, no foul sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, you also think of, because it's all vision. A lot of them refer to it as like vision based as well. So then I think of, almost like having a rogue that has a blink dog with him. Because as long as you can get to like a window, the dog can get in there.
Right.
And then as long as they can potentially see you, they can get out.
Right.
So there's a lot of espionage.
Yeah. I also think it could be a fun sort of packed animal for a warlock too. You know, obviously, like the creatures that they have the ability to have packs with, I think are less HP than that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think blink dogs could be really fun to have as like a packed creature, especially if you're going like, what's the one with the pact of the Archfey? Like one of the gifts is a blink dog, you know, because you're dealing with some Archfey in the Feywild. That's, you know, whoever that is that your character chooses. But yeah, one of the gifts for making the pact could be that sort of companionship with a blink dog instead of like whatever other creature you'd want to choose. I think that could be fun too.
Yeah, and then I was looking, I mean, mainly because it was a link tree out through, you know, wiki and article and this.
You click on all the links.
Oh yeah, but James Wyatt back in the heady days of March of 2000 in Dragon number 269.
After surviving Y2K.
Yes, they were talking about the animal henchman, and it was interesting the loyalty that the blink dog has, in the sense that while you could certainly just, you know, purchase one, like you better do right by it because it'll just leave and have fun trying to deal with the fact that it can just teleport away. Basically like this ethereal jaunt through, and what are you going to do if it decides it's done? So basically,
you basically have to like blindfold it. Yeah. So it couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, making sure you treat it right. That way it doesn't just scamper off whenever it feels like it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the other part I've thought is the idea of just certainly flipping it on its head and just making them evil. And then just kind of flip everything we just went through. And then it could just be an evil society of dogs. And I think of like all the hyenas in The Lion King.
Yeah.
And just going that direction. But at the same time, like, or you've done both. Because again, talking about the idea that there are different packs and like what they honor and what they want to talk about and what they want to do, and having different kinds of breeds of dogs represent those different packs. And just now you just have this interesting, like intelligent races, if you will, of dog throughout your entire world.
There's so much, like my players are about to go into the Feywild after there's one of the characters that's a pixie, and I just have this imagination of like they're not going through the portal like by where she lives. They're going to have to travel quite a ways to get there. But I imagine like stumbling across this territory that's run by blink dogs and just like scaring the crap out of them as they like enter into like this open grove area, and all of a sudden these blink dogs just start like appearing and just like do they start attacking, or like what do they do, you know? Because like they're going to see, these blink dogs are going to see dwarves and humans and various other races they probably never seen before. And even though they're lawful good, you've got 5 random people walking across your territory. You know, what are you going to do? Any sensible society is going to try and protect itself. And so do they just show up and like start barking and blink dog at them? Or, you know, could be a really interesting encounter for them.
Yeah. Well, you also think of what does lawful mean once you're in the Feywild. I mean, those laws are very different in what you can and can't do and what is following to the letter of the law. I mean, in some ways you have to almost more think of what's good, air quote, in those instances, but just having like one sitting in the path and then all of the other ones just like appearing and disappearing all around them.
Right. Whew, so fun.
Also, if you use blink in the Feywild, do you like go to the material plane for a half second? Like, how does that work? I mean, I guess you're going in the ethereal, which is theoretically the space between, but it would just be kind of funny to just like see a dog for a half second then they disappear.
True. Yeah, because it doesn't say on the blink dog's description. It just says a blink dog takes its name from its ability to blink in and out. It does not say it teleport. The dog magically teleports along with its equipment it's carrying up to 40 feet. So it does not say that it passes into the ethereal plane or anything, or the Fey plane or anything like that. It just poof, there it goes. The thing to note about blink dogs though too is that it's not like an every action that it can do it. It does have a recharge to it, which I can only imagine how broken that would be if it could do it literally every turn.
Yeah, see, I thought it could. I mean, I thought it used to be able to.
It could be. Yeah, it's got a recharge of 4 to 6 now, so it's still like a 50% chance that it could do it, which is pretty high for a recharge to be able to do that, because most are like 5 or 6 in order to get it. But
so in 3rd edition, a blink dog can teleport as Dimension Door once per round as a free action.
Wow.
The ability only affects the blink dog, which never appears within a solid object and can immediately act after teleporting.
That's just pretty broken.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, it helps when you have 22 hit points to be able to be able to. Oh wait, and that's on top of blink. A blink dog can use blink as the spell and can evoke or end the effect as a free action.
And that was in 3rd edition. Jeez. Now, the thing that I would say to Neal is that like this idea of blink dog doesn't have to just be reserved to dogs. You could have really, I mean, whatever. You could reskin that blink smart society and put it on like any creature, really, if you wanted to. Wouldn't advise doing it to dragons. They're already pretty overpowered, you know.
Blink dragons.
Blink dragons sounds terrifying. But like you could do it to really any sort of creature. I will say blink dogs probably seems the most fitting for it. Like blink cats. It'd be pretty dope if my cat could blink.
Oh,
but
even worse.
You know.
All bad. No, don't do that. Well, yeah, and it's like it all depends on the setting that you have. Like would it like birds, fish, you know, figuring out what like an aquatic version. Like if it's a blink dolphin.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not going to do a blink trout.
No, that's super funny. That's how they get up the river, man. It's way easier.
Instead of swimming up there's one like blink trout leader that can just like teleport to the top and then is just yelling at all the rest of them to get up here. Oh, I am ordering a Feywild book since my players are going there from Cadwood Publishing.
Okay.
And it's like Feywild Creature Codex or Feyland Creature Codex or whatever. And I think there was one called like Doubt Trout or something that just like made everyone within 40 feet of it super depressed.
Whoa.
It was so funny. Like, I don't really understand when or why I would use this.
Yeah.
But it's super dumb and super silly, which only makes sense in the Feywild.
Oh, the Doubt Trout.
The Doubt Trout.
Just so we're clear, upon further reading, because I guess I had really forgotten and I remember what the allure was from back in those early days of 3rd. Blink is no joke. Basically, you blink back and forth between the material and ethereal planes. You look as though you're winking in and out of reality very quickly and at random. You basically take 50% damage from everything unless it can hit the ethereal plane.
Wow.
And you can, as a free action, dimension door once per round.
What was the challenge rating of Blink Dogs back then?
2.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's been severely nerfed since then. Yeah.
Gross. Add these things that I've just told you. That's way more fun. Only because, like, it happens. It certainly happens. And you're trying to fit certain things into certain categories. And
gotta have different creatures you gotta fill out the challenge ratings.
Yeah, and when you're creating this entire book full of monsters, you're looking at the grand scheme of what you're offering. But, like, if it's me, I only have to tailor it to the people sitting at my table, which are either 2 kids or, a bunch of people that I've played with before. So then, my son already has a wiener dog as his familiar. So
of course he does. Why wouldn't he?
And so the idea of like adding these back, because part of me also thinks like the players at my table who have played for a long time would probably just be bummed at seeing like the Blink Dog and the iteration that it is. So I would certainly add this just because it makes it so much more ominous. Depending on which road you're going, like if this is a pack of Blink Dogs that your group has to fight, adding all this back in is terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're basically, you have a 50% chance to miss all the time, and it's dimension dooring.
Which that takes some of like that. Yeah, that takes some of like the Displacer Beast abilities and puts it on the Blink Dog, and keeps all of the Blink Dog's abilities, but just makes them more powerful than they were before. Yeah, that's interesting. Neal, what kind of homework do you have for our listeners based off of this conversation?
I'd like you to go down to your local animal shelter and get a dog. I'm not. You should. That's probably a good thing you should do. I have 3 dogs, and I'm certainly also true. But that's not. It's not the homework for this episode.
That's true.
But I have 3 dogs, so I'm certainly not getting another one. It's hard. I think it's the biggest thing would be kind of doing what we've done here. It's like, so maybe there's nothing left to do, but searching out and then finding, I'm trying to think if there is any piece of media that would really help with this.
Well, so the thing that I was thinking of, and I watched the movies when I was really little, and I do not remember anything about them, but I remembered Homeward Bound movies.
That's what I was
like
thinking.
The dogs talk to each other, you know? So I was thinking about that. I was like, is there any societal stuff in it? Like outside of them being able to talk, is there anything in that one? So you could go and watch the Homeward Bound movies again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first off, the fact that I'm going to say anything following this sentence makes me slightly uncomfortable. The level to which I think I remember this, but in the second one, they get lost in the city. So there is like this pack of dogs that they interact with, like a pack of strays, and then you see the society and it's broken into certain things. So depending on how much you've decided your players can communicate with these dogs, that just unlocks a whole lot of it. Because my other thought was the idea of like that sage being able to allow the players to hear.
Yeah.
And communicate. Like there's some level of communication that can then happen. The other one I thought of was also like Milo and Otis.
Yep.
So that's part of it is like looking at these pieces of media that have dogs doing non-dog-like things, but also, you're not giving them thumbs.
What was the movie, The Hidden Life of Pets? I think was one that came out recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You could do that. Or Oliver and Company was the other one we had talked about earlier. Like mostly I think the homework that we're giving, Neal, is like watch movies that don't anthropomorphize animals, but kind of makes them relatable to humans because of society and speech.
All dogs go to heaven.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Even then you could like go and watch The Lion King.
Yeah.
To see how that society, like you could take various elements of even the Lion Kingdom itself and place it in there, because who's to say that like some sort of Rafiki-like character does not exist in the Feywild that the Blink Dogs have gotten to know? Could the sage be a different, like a highly intelligent baboon or something that lives in the canopies? Do any number of things with that.
Okay, we did it. We gave homework, which I was really stressed out about because I didn't know what we were going to do.
Yes.
Okay, so
one more really fun one. Madagascar. If you wanted a hilarious one, you could look at the Society of the Lemurs. that's in there.
Oh, yeah.
Who I think that one could be really funny to just have like
Yep.
a really weird blink dog society loosely or basically stealing the entire lemur society there.
The other one, if like depending on how technological you need this to be, clearly you just need to go watch Paw Patrol, where these jokers are driving around in cars, like
in
it's
cars and
flying
fire
helicopters,
trucks and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, we have done it.
Oh, nope. One more.
Nope.
One more. Planet of the Apes doesn't necessarily anthropomorphize the apes, even though they're, I mean, bipedal creatures for the most part and have thumbs, but like structuring, seeing how their structured society works. Like you could take elements of how the alpha males work within the society, how, you know, the younger ones are treated in that society. You could find what are the things that are important to potentially the blink dogs and base them kind of loosely off of the Planet of the Apes culture. So anyways, I promise that was my last one.
Okay. And if you don't have a last one and you want to tell us all about it, you can always email us at dungeonmasterblock@gmail.com. Yeah, tell us how you added blink dogs, how you added all kinds of animals to your world.
You can also go ahead and leave us an iTunes review. You can also go ahead and leave us an Apple Podcast review or whatever various podcasting catchers you use. Leave us a 5-star review or the equivalent there. Any reviews you leave help us get out to the masses more, and we want to help people be the best dungeon masters they can be. You can find us on Twitter at DMS_block. That's DMs block. And you can like us on Facebook as well.
And of course, the Block Party Podcast. The Block Party Podcast Network has a proud member, and it is the Dungeon Masters Block. I don't care if I said it wrong. I fixed it in the end. And you can check out other shows on the network like Dungeons, Dragons, and Daughters, which I'm re-listening to because my kids won't stop making me put it on in the car, as well as Detentions and Dragons and more. And as always, thank you for listening to the Dungeon Masters Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game, the only person capable of playing God,
killing characters,
and lowering the ego of everyone else at the table.
Have a good night, everyone.
And keep on dungeon mastering.
It's not inspiration, it's not wisdom, and it's bad advice.
Yeah, to spice up your game, just bring a dog that'll bite people. He's like, oh God. You're like, yeah, roll for initiative, fool.
Goodbye.